Hello, everyone. Very nice for you to join us today. My name is Kelsey Stewart from Fab Cafe in Tokyo, and it brings me great pleasure to open today's event, A Democratic Creation and Experiment of Democracy. This will be the first volume of a number of online events to promote the YouFab Global Creative Awards. Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce the two guests and special moderator for today. First, I would like to briefly introduce Ms. Asa Ito, who will be the Chief Judge for YouFab 2021. Asa Ito is the Director, Future of Humanity Research Center at the Institute of Innovative Research in Tokyo Institute of Technology. Asa Ito is Director of the Future of Humanity, as well as having been a visiting scholar at MIT in 2019, specializing in aesthetics and contemporary art. After initially intending to become a biologist, she turned her academic focus to the arts while in her third year at university. She obtained her PhD in literature in 2010, having studied aesthetics, fine arts, and culture at the University of Tokyo Graduate School of Humanities and Sociology. As author, Dr. Ito's major works include Me no mienai hito wa sekai wo dou miteru no ka? How do people without sight see the world? Published by Kobunsha. Her work was also recognized at the 42nd Suntory Prize for Social Sciences and Humanities in 2020. And it's my great pleasure to welcome her today. Hello, Asa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Introduction. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next guest I would like to introduce is coming from Cascoland. Roel and Fiona, are you with us today? Hello, thank you so much for joining. So Cascoland is an international Amsterdam-based network of artists, architects, designers, and performers. Projects are initiated by Fiona de Bell and Roel Schoenmakers, who's joining us here today. And they are executing these projects with multidisciplinary teams of artists and designers, promoting mobilization, participation, and networking through artistic exchange and collaboration. Since 2004, Cascoland has executed projects internationally in the Netherlands, South Africa, Brazil, Peru, Mexico, Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Palestine, Japan, and in Europe. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure.
Hello. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be invited to join this beautiful platform. So we're really excited. Thank you.
Us too, we're very excited to hear your opinions on this year's theme, which Ms. Asa has set for us this year. Thank you. And finally, I would like to introduce today's Crosstalk Moderator, who is Tim Wong, the co-founder of Fab Cafe and Loftwork in Taiwan. Tim was born in Hong Kong and lived in the US for 17 years. He relocated to Taiwan in 2008 because he believes Taiwan has the good opportunity to create a creative platform that cultivates innovative ideas and projects with creative talents from different backgrounds. Before co-founding Fab Cafe Taipei in 2013 and Loftwork Taiwan in 2014, Tim has been an urban design practitioner for 7 years and worked on urban design projects across the US, Middle East, and various Asian cities. He graduated from Harvard Graduate School of Design with a dual master's degree in architecture and urban design. Tim, are you here with us today?
Yes, I'm very glad to have this opportunity to talk to the two speakers today. So, very excited.
And I'm very glad to have you join as moderator today. Great. So I would like to quickly introduce some of the basics about YouFab in about 3 minutes. I'll be going quite quickly. This is a Global Creative Award with 10 years. Yes, this is our 10th anniversary of history. So I won't be able to cover all of it, but I will do my best to give the overview of what our project is about. Oh, let's go to next slide. There we are. Great. So YouFab is an award that started in 2012 as a way to celebrate digital fabrication with the creators at YouFab. So in 2012, at least in Japan, tools like 3D printers and laser cutters were kind of almost exoticized to a point that they thought maybe these machines can save the world. Maybe we can use 3D printers and create anything, and the world would be a better place for this. At the end of the day, we found that 3D printers cannot save the world, but the creators behind them can do really great and awesome things to make the world a better place. And so slowly over time, YouFab started to move a little bit away from the digital fabrication machines themselves and more towards facing society and what society is doing at that moment. So YouFab is a kind of story of how this concept of fab, which we define as creativity that transcends and combines the digital and physical realms, moves through time and moves through space, moves through history alongside society and society's challenges. YouFab is hosted by Fab Cafe. I myself am also a member from Fab Cafe. So Fab Cafe is on the one hand, a digital fabrication cafe. We host workshops, hackathons. We invite local creators to do one-on-one goodies, like making things, workshops. On the other hand, we're also doing projects with large companies. And basically, we imagine Fab Cafe to be an open space where anybody and everybody can come and feel empowered to ask themselves the question, what do you fab? In 9 years, Fab Cafe has opened in 11 locations around the world. So for example, today, Tim will be joining us from Fab Cafe in Taipei, but we're also located in Bangkok, in Kuala Lumpur, Hong Kong. We also have locations in Europe, in Barcelona, Toulouse, and Strasbourg. And we're also located in Monterrey, Mexico. In addition to that, we have 4 locations in Japan, not only in Tokyo, but in Kyoto, Nagoya, and Hidashi. Over the years, we have evolved in many different ways through YouFab. So for example, in 2012, it was predominantly around the laser cutter as a machine. We had a beautiful work by architect Tomoji Ono, which was called the 360-degree book. This book was created by laser cutter, and as you spin it, you can get, just as the name says, a 360-degree view of different stories. So sometimes the stories are about Snow White, or sometimes the stories are about Space Brothers, which is a famous manga here in Japan. It was just a really fun project to develop alongside with him. Since then, we've had works in biology, we've had works in product development, we've had an entire community win an award. So for example, in 2019, we really showed that YouFab is a genreless contest whenever an entire community won for that year's theme, which was conviviality, set by Kei Wakabayashi, the previous editor of Wired here in Japan. Yes. So just to give you a kind of brief overview of the kind of themes that we use here at YouFab. So for example, 2 years ago, we had the theme called Contactless by Default. This theme was very much in response to COVID-19's effect on the world. Of course, this pandemic had many influences about how the way that we contact or don't contact people. And many product developers in particular were looking at what are the products or services that we can create where people don't need to be in direct contact. Almost ironically, a lot of the winners from this award kind of showed the connections between people. So even though sometimes maybe we're connecting through telepresence or we're connecting through a shared passion or love for fashion or sustainability, in the end, even through COVID-19, we're still somehow contacted, even though we're in a world, a kind of new normal, where we're entering a contactless by default phase. Last year, we had the theme, in 2019, we had the theme of conviviality. And this time, Kei Wakabayashi was also the chief judge of YouFab. We were also joined by Keiichiro Matsumura, who is an associate professor of anthropology at Okayama University. We were also joined by Leonard Bartholomew, who was a curator at YChem in Yamanashi, in Yamaguchi Prefecture, as well as Chiaki Hayashi, who is the co-founder of Waftwork, which is the parent company of Fab Cafe. Yes, so just to briefly talk about this year. So this year, as I mentioned previously, our chief judge is Miss Asa Ito, who has developed this very timely and quite elegant theme for our theme this year. So the key word this year is democratic experiments. And I'll just read briefly what she's written here. So who are the stakeholders in the creation you make? We look forward to works that attempt to engage in dialogues that transcend the boundaries of species, space, and time, Direct dialogue may not be possible with some stakeholders. Hence, we are also excited to see experiments in communication methods that seek how to interact with such beings. It does not have to be a universal solution, so please give us the best solution you can derive from your locality. We do not limit the format of the work. It can be furniture, food, architecture, vehicles, communities, or services. I think that today we're going to be digging into this theme even more, and I'm super excited to see the different perspectives that people from around the world can consider for this. So this year, we're also going to be having a special award like we have in years past. In years past, we've been supported by, for example, Panasonic for the New Steam Prize. In 2018, we were supported by the Lion Corporation under the theme of a future where work and life merge together. And in 2017, we were also supported by the Haptic Design Project, where we are connecting through sense of touch as a communication channel. In particular, I love the winning work from the Haptic Design Award, which is called Third Thumb by Danny Claude. This is a very interesting intervention where basically it adds, as it says in the title, a third thumb, which is controlled by motors in your shoes. This project is also being currently researched by, like neuroscientists as well, to see the effects on the brain of how this product can affect humans. This year, the special prize is called the Panasonic Prize. It's directly related to the theme of democratic experiments. And the winning work for this one will also be exhibited in the Panasonic Center, in particular in an area called Akedoe, which was just recently opened this past April. So we look forward to seeing it there. Yes, these are some images from inside Akedoe. And if you're interested in the special award theme and digging more into democratic experiments from even more perspectives, I warmly welcome you to join us for the special prize event, which is being held on September 3rd, Friday. The event is called The Thinking and Process of Making Things for the Future. Great. So this year for YouFab, we have 4 judges, 3 of which are joining us in the room today. I've already introduced Ms. Asa Ito and Ms. Fiona Bell and Mr. Roel Schoenmakers, but we are also being joined again this year by Kampire Bahana, who is a DJ, and she's well known for her work in Kampala's Nyege Nyege Collective. We are also being joined this year by Arina Tsukada, who is a curator, and she is the founder of the Whole Universe Association since 2018. We look forward to hearing from them in future events as well. A brief word about the schedule. So right now, YouFab is currently in the call for applications phase, and we will continue to be in this phase until October 31st. So for those of you who are interested, please apply soon, and please let us know if you have any questions about the application process. The judging committee will be coming together in late November online to determine the winners of YouFab. The results will be announced in January 2021, and we will be holding the award ceremony and exhibition in February 2021, COVID-19 willing. About the prizes themselves, so we have 1 grand prize winner who receives a beautiful trophy designed by Kohei Nawa, also a $2,000 prize. We also have a first prize winner, which receives a trophy and a $1,000 US prize. We also have a student prize with 1 winner, which receives certificate and $500 US, as well as several certificates for the special winners for the finalists. Whenever we are asking for the specific criteria questions, we're often asking the questions, for example, is it innovative? Is it aware of the audience? Does it hold a fab spirit? Is it open-minded? And how is the theme interpreted? Oh, apologies. And what is the quality of the experience? So with that, I would like to draw to a close my introduction of YouFab, and I would like to now pass the baton to, I believe Asa Ito is the first to be presenting for us today.
Okay, so I'll start.
Thank you.
Wait a moment. So I will make a presentation in Japanese, but will be translated later. I'm sorry. はい、私から、今年のテーマですね、デモクラティックエクスペリメンツについて、少し私の研究のバックグラウンドを通してお話ししたいと思います。
So this presentation deals with this year's theme, democratic experiments, with my own background research.
私は研究者として、人間の体に興味を持っています。特に障害を持った人たちの体に興味を持っています。
I'm always interested in human body, especially the ones of the disabled people.
例えば、全盲で視覚が使えないっていう人は、聴覚とか触覚を使いながら世界を認識しています。で、そういう人たちが見てる世界っていうのは、私たちが見てる世界とは全然違う、世界の側面なわけですね。
And I'm interested in the different worldview of the people who have a challenging visual disability, who must have viewed the world in a different way from the rest of the people.
あるいは、喫音を持っている人、喫音がある人っていうのは言葉と体の関係っていうのをいつも考えていて、それゆえ、言葉に対してとても繊細な感覚を持っていたりします。
Also, people with stuttering behavior might have a different relation with regard to the language and the body's relationship.
でそういった様々な体を持っている人が様々な世界の見方をしているっていうところが私の研究の出発点です。
So basically, what I'm interested in, what I'm researching is the worldview of different people with different physical conditions.
で例えば、その障害ってことを創造的に使うことっていうのができると思うんですね。
In that sense, some of the disabilities could be useful for one to be more creative.
例えば、2016年に、東京の森美術館というところで、視覚のない国をデザインしようというワークショップを開催しました。
And then, for example, in 2016, at the Mori Museum in Tokyo, we have exhibited, we made an exhibition where we imagined the world where there's no visuals.
でこのワークショップは、もともとはH.G. ウェルズという有名な SF 小説家の盲人国という100年ぐらい前に書かれた作品に基づいています。
And it's inspired, this workshop is inspired by a novel written by H.G. Wells about the country of blinds.
でその盲人国では全員が先天的に、全盲なんですけれども、そういう人たちが作る国家っていうのは全然この私たちの健常者が中心になっている世界とは、全く違っているわけです。
In the novel, the country, all the people living in that country are all blind, and then when they were born, so no one has seen anything.
で、この H.G. ウェルズの作品っていうのは短編なのでとても短いんですね。で、だからここで書かれている設定、つまり全員が先天的に全盲の国があったら、それはどんな国かっていうのをもっとじっくり考えたいと思いました。
And since the Wells novel was very short, there's only a few examples of the possibility of about the country of blindness. So in taking this opportunity, we try to explore that possibility further.
で、このワークショップでは、例えばこの視覚がない国だったら、建築はどうなっているのかとか、教育はどうなっているのかとか、名物料理はどうなっているのかとか、どういう犯罪が起こるのかとか、そういったことをみんなで話し合って、でその話し合いに基づいて、サンプルを作るっていうことをやりました。
So basically, what we discussed in this workshop is that what would be the architecture or education system of food or crime in this blind country, and then we are to come up with some sample to show the story.
で、こういったバックグラウンドからですね、今年のテーマは、デモクラティックエクスペリメンツっていうふうに設定したんですけれども、そこには2つの、ニュアンスがあるというふうに思っています。
So this workshop is a sort of a starting point of for me to set up this use theme for YouFab, which is democratic experiments, and I have set the two backgrounds for this theme.
で、そのうち一つは、民主的なものづくりということです。
And one being democratic creative.
で、もう一つは、民主主義を、の実験をするということです。
So the one side is to how to make things democratically, and the other side is how to cultivate that democracy in the course of creating stuff.
で、つまり2つを組み合わせると、ものを作りながら民主主義を作るっていうことが、できたらいいなというふうに思っています。
So by combining the two ends, I'm expecting that we can sort of create the democracy whilst creating, making a creation.
で、この2つのニュアンスについて順番にお話ししたいんですけれども、まず1つ目、民主主義の実験をするということに関してお話しします。
So I'd like here to deep dive on those two aspects. And the first is democratic, how to say, creating democratically.
私たちは今去年からですね、危機の時代を生きているっていうふうに言えると思います。今でもなくCOVID-19 によってもたらされた危機です。
COVID-19 brought us unprecedented situation.
で、この危機の時代っていうのは、ちょっと見方を変えるとですね、とても創造的で、もしかしたらアナキズム的な民主主義の実験ができる、そういう機会なんじゃないかなというふうに思っています。
And I personally believe that this such difficult time allows us to sort of, come up with a way of things that is more anarchism, along the line with anarchism, and do more things that otherwise not possible.
例えば、私たち日本はですね、ちょうど10年前に2011年に東日本大震災を経験しています。
And we have experienced a big earthquake in 2011.
で、それはとても大変だったんですけれども、同時に様々な人が、いわゆる国家っていうものが公共サービスを提供できない、そういう危機的な状況の中で、とてもボトムアップ的な創造性を発揮していた、とも言えると思います。
And back then it was also a difficult time, very difficult time. And then that caused a national system of nation not to work as it's supposed to, and then we had no choice but to do things from the bottom-up approach.
例えば、小説家の伊藤聖子さんが、最近出版された本、福島モノローグという本の中で、様々な人々の創造性を紹介しています。
And then this is a book cover of Fukushima Monologue. It's a novel by Seiko Ito. In this book, he explains many creativities coming from the people.
例えば、ある女性は、彼女が避難した先がとても大きなコンベンションセンターだったんですね。
And then in one of the story is about this woman evacuated to this convention center.
でそこで彼女は DIY で、ラジオのスタジオを作って、その施設に避難している人たちのための放送を開始しました。
And what she did was to start a radio station DIY style on her own at the site.
でここでは、彼女この地域っていうのは山間部で、通常の時にはあんまりラジオの電波が届かないそういう地域だったんですね。
This is because the area was very remote and then often experiencing some difficulty receiving the radio waves.
ところが、この震災が起こって、全国から様々な避難物資が送られる中に、小さいラジオ機っていうのがたくさん入っていた。で、それを彼女は使おうと思ったわけです。
And at the time, there are many supplies for aid coming from all over Japan. And then amongst those supplies, there are many radio devices included. And she leveraged that devices to make her own radio station.
で、そのラジオでは、その公共の電波はなかなか受信できないんだけれども、ここのコンベンションセンターの中だけだったら発信することができて、そこで彼女は本当に地域の、ここに避難している人たちを勇気づけるようなローカルなラジオ放送っていうのを開始しました。
So by leveraging the radio devices, she could set up a radio system that is good amongst the local, where sometimes the public radio was not very easy to listen to.
で、もう一つ別の例なんですけれども、こちらの例はですね、とある少女が、この福島という第一原子力発電所の爆発事故で、放射性物質によって汚染された地域に新しい農場を作りました。
And another story is about the girl who created her own farm in the area where close to the nuclear plant.
で、彼女はですね、震災後に、牛たちがとても悲惨な死に方をしているということを知りました。
And she learned right after the quake and the incident, she learned that many cows died very miserable way during that time.
どうしてかというと、第一原子力発電所の事故が起こった時に人間たちはすぐに避難をしたんですね。ところが牛たちは避難することができずに、その牛舎につながれたまま、何も食べるものもなくて、水も飲めなくて、本当に鼻をつながれたままですね、死んでいった。その姿をたくさん見てきました。
In that, whilst human can evacuate the site, but the cow, they are chained by their nose and then to the farm, and then there was no food or water supplied, and they were practically let to die.
そこで彼女はですね、偶然、その牛舎から逃げることができた幸運な牛たちっていうのを集めて、新しい農場を作りました。
So what she did was to locate the cows who were luckily able to escape from those farms and then gather them to create her own farm.
で、その農場の牛たちっていうのはとても重要な役割を果たしています。
And then those cows plays a very important role.
それはどういう働きかというと、この地域の、雑草を食べる。で、この地域の雑草っていうのは、放射性物質をたくさん含んでいる、そういう雑草なわけです。
So what they did was because of the radioactivity fall, those grasses are in that area were contaminated, and those cows go out and then eat those grasses, weeds, to cleanse the grass.
で、牛たちはですね、その放射性物質のセシウムを分解する能力を持っていて、彼らの体を通してですね、この地域のその生態系がもう一回復活するような、そういう働きを、牛たちはしています。
And practically, those cows have an ability to consume and digest cesium, the radioactivity, and then play an important role in cleansing the area of radioactivities.
でこういう例を見るとですね、本当に危機的な状況なんだけれども、その大変さの中からですね、人々が、できることを探して、お互いに助け合っていく。その中に、なんかとても創造的で、アナキズム的なですね、民主主義の可能性が見えるんじゃないか。そんな風に思っています。
And those are just two examples, but they show that during the difficult times like that, people come up with very clever ideas and help each other, and then being very creative and almost anarchy to do something.
で、多分これと同じようなことが、この1年半、この新型コロナウイルスのパンデミック状況下でも様々にあったのじゃないかというふうに思ってい
And
ま
I
す。
suspect a similar sort of spark of creativity has happened over the last year and a half during this pandemic.
で、もう一つのニュアンスですね。ものづくりを民主的に行うっていうことも、COVID-19 の状況を意識した内容です。
And another sort of hidden theme I have in mind is also along this line, which is how to create in using democratic process.
パンデミックが世界に広がり始めていた時期にですね、イタリアの小説家パオロ・ジョルダーノが、本を出しています。
So this also has a lot to do with the pandemic situation we are in. For example, this book cover is of the novel by the book by Italian author Paolo Giordano.
この本の中でパオロ・ジョルダーノとても重要なことを言っています。それは、パンデミックっていうのは私たち人間に様々なつながりっていうのを意識させる、そういう力を持ってるんだということです。
And then in this book, he points out that this very pandemic allows us to realize how the importance of connection between us.
で、通常ですね、都会に生活をしていると、大量生産、大量消費をすることが当たり前になっていて、本当に自分の消費がどういう人たち、どういう生物の犠牲の上に成り立っているのかってことをほとんど意識しないで生活してしまっていると思います。
So usually if the things is not difficult, usually many people live in urban settings, and in there, where all those mass production or mass consumerism is rampant. And then because of that, we sort of overlook how all those products are made, by whom, and where are they coming from.
で、今回のこの新型コロナウイルスのパンデミックっていうのは、もうそういうものづくりの仕方は、もうそういう時代は終わったんだっていうことを私たちに突きつけていると思います。
And he believes that this pandemic sort of tells us that all those are the days of mass production and mass consumption, and then it must end.
つまり私たちが何かを作るときに、それがどういう人たち、どういう生き物、どういう、存在と関連づいていて、自分が作ることの関係者がものすごくたくさんいる。その様々な人たちのことを意識しながら作るっていうことを、やっていかないといけないんだと思います。
That the very act of creation has to consider all the stakeholders, so to speak, being, some organism or living being, and then there are many stakeholders that are involved in creating something, and we have to think about those stakeholders.
はい、そういうわけで私は何か人間中心主義ではない、人間以外の様々な生物、存在も意識しながら、そういう様々なステークホルダーたちといかに対話をして、そういう人たちと関わる中でものが作られていく。なんかそういう、 中に新しい民主主義の可能性が見えるんじゃないかと思って、その可能性について皆さんと一緒に考えていきたいなというふうに思っています。
So, therefore, I believe that because there are so many stakeholders, being a human or non-human or living being or non-living being, there are so many stakeholders, and every stakeholders we need to converse with those stakeholders in some way or another, and engaging with them to in order to create something. That's the what we're gonna have to do now. So in that, I believe there will be some new kind of democracy coming out of those process, and then I see a lot of potential in that, and I would like to explore that potential with all those who would be sending pieces to YouFab contest.
はい、これで私の発表を終わりにしたいと思います。ありがとうございました。
That'll be my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. That was a very inspiring talk. And I think we have a lot to chew on and a lot to think about with that. Thank you very much. So I would now like to pass the baton to Roel and Fiona from Cascoland. Are you guys okay? You're here?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we have about 10 to 15 minutes for your presentation, and then we would like to go into the crosstalk.
Well, thank you very much to the previous speaker. On behalf of Cascoland, I'm going to do a bit of the talking, and Fiona will add on where she thinks I leave out important information. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see the word Cascoland there?
Yes, the screen sharing is working fine.
Fantastic. As Kelsey rightly said in her introduction, we are a network of designers, visual artists, performers, academics, and we always operate in these multidisciplinary teams. So as such, the Cascoland way of working is already a kind of a democratic experiment. What we think is important in our work is to look for more sustainable uses of spaces, skills, and resources, empowerment of communities, innovative social and low-tech solutions that address local needs, bottom-up development and shared ownership of public spaces through a revaluation of the commons, the shared resources that we have on our planet, and very important also to the protection of our local or our global ecosystems that we're part of. The global challenges like climate change, pandemics, social inequality are mainly man-induced. Mankind can, however, no longer be the center of our development thinking. We have to look at more democratic ways, as Asa Ito also said, to include non-humans as well. But we'll have to look at our society locally and globally as part of a global ecosystem under threat. We will have to change our behavior and our system world thinking. And hopefully art and design can contribute to this because of our different way of looking at the issues. I'm going to run you now through a few examples of our projects that try to that are centered around this democratic experiments. A simple one already is these are the residents of a neighborhood in development in Amsterdam. Important was to make this image. We needed about 100 residents to participate to make this word start. This shows how we have to have the residents as part in our projects. We try to start bending the rules by, for instance, occupying a street in Bishkek, the capital of Kyrgyzstan, to challenge the cars and their perception of their ownership of the streets. Maybe the streets don't belong to the cars. Very important for us is to create conversation, and that's why we also want to try to enter the global stage where the policymakers are gathering. And for instance, this is the climate summit in Paris where we entered, and we tried to promote a conversation between participants there by just handing out these simple signs. I am looking for this, that, or that to make change happen. And suddenly people were starting to find each other and starting to have a conversation.
Yeah, and a simple cardboard sign would also work in making connections.
Yeah, so it can be a very simple intervention, but it can have a lot of effect. We try to support communities worldwide that are oppressed, like these ladies in Lima, Peru, who were being evicted from their houses, and we zoomed into a daily life tool that they were using, their barbecues. And we turned the barbecue into a barricade to close off the street, to empower these people, to address this threat of eviction. In Johannesburg, in South Africa, we met with these Mozambican car mechanics, illegal refugees from Mozambique in South Africa. They were constantly being harassed by the police, and they were car mechanics, so they wanted to work on the sidewalk. So we created open air, shared workspaces for them, and we made this part of fences so that the police could not take them away from them.
And also give them some dignity while they were sitting and waiting for the clients on the floor. We provided benches for them to sit.
And from this global, we now zoom into some local projects in Amsterdam, where there was a vacant lot that together with residents, we started activating it. A number of residents said, oh, we would love to keep chickens in public space. Can we do that? So we built these 4 trailers that are mobile chicken coops. And we asked the residents to participate in this because, of course, we were talking about live animals that were in these chicken houses. So to have the shared use of public spaces, you also have to take on responsibility as a citizen yourself. So in that, we call this a democratic experiment.
Very concrete. If you don't feed the chicken, it will die. So it's your responsibility, really, to take care of it.
So we want to address the residents to take their own responsibilities in their cities and in their lives. Now, these mobile chicken houses we just saw were just trailers, and the next year we turned them into mobile gardens. People wanted to garden in the city, but were not allowed to. But we were allowed to put trailers there. So these trailers became actually tools for generators for change, because after a year, the municipality realized that they could no longer deny people from gardening in the city. And that's when we opened our first allotment garden in a garden in building blocks, which was maintained by the residents themselves. They took over all the maintenance from the housing corporation.
And interesting also to know is that these gardens were closed actually for the residents. They were not allowed to enter it, but through the demand of really all the residents, 70% of who was living there wanted to garden and to produce food in their own cities, the housing company had to open up this space.
So an example of your democratic rights that you have, if you organize and you can engage in a conversation with the housing corporations or with your municipalities. This was the start of a number of gardens that we opened in Amsterdam. This is only last year. Again, a housing complex, social housing, where residents took over their inner garden and turned it into allotment gardens. And here you see the opening last April, and this is a few weeks ago. You see that the garden is blooming and people are proud of it and taking responsibility for it. We see public green in the cities very much also as a common, as a resource for everybody. This is an orchard or a fruit tree orchard in the city of Amsterdam. The house you see in the back, that's where we're sitting now here. So we are doing this project in the middle of public green, where people take on responsibilities for maintenance of the green, and thus public green becomes a property of the residents who live around there.
Yeah, and the difference between the two gardens, of course, is at one garden, an allotment is being owned by a family, And here you see the garden where it's owned. There's no ownership of one person. It's really owned by a whole community, and you are free as resident to pick the fruit. So you have to develop common rules how to go about with this public space.
And now we are talking about public outdoor spaces, but we are also interested in developing indoor public spaces. For instance, this was a street in Amsterdam West that was used to be a shopping street. Here you see one of those shops, but they were all boarded up. There was no economic activity anymore. But there were a lot of residents who expressed that they wanted to start a shop, but they didn't think they could
pay the rent
or allow themselves to develop themselves into shopkeepers because they didn't have the experience. So we opened up the one-day shop, the Eendagszaak, in one of those shops. So for every day of the week, a different resident with a desire to become a shopkeeper could try their shops. So every day there was a different activity. Here you see the hairdresser. And as we all know, hairdressers hear a lot about the personal life from their clients. So this is also, it's more than just an economic activity, it's also a social activity.
And as designers, we try to always listen and look very carefully at the location where we are. So we don't develop our ideas ourselves, but it is a really a mix of what we hear and what we see. And this lady was very, very important to us to understand completely where the values and the rules and regulations of that neighborhood. So then we could start as designers looking into it.
Yeah, and of course in Amsterdam we have a lot of cultures, a lot of people from migrant backgrounds. So we have a lot of target groups. This is a Moroccan lady who is a masseuse. So she's also very physically active with her clients, and in this activity, she also hears a lot about maybe the problems or the challenges that people face in this multicultural society. And so what turned out was that these shopkeepers that came from the neighborhood, they created what we call an informal community of care. So people got a feeling, a sense of community because of these different activities every day where different target groups were welcome. And what was very important about the project was, this is Renee, who runs a neighborhood kitchen, that if you were successful, the housing corporation would allow you to start your own shop in the street. And this is Renee's neighborhood kitchen now. So he started for himself and he grew out of this incubator that we call the one-day shop. We like to take this economic activity also onto the streets. And this is another neighborhood in Amsterdam where there was a very dark and dreary tunnel, but a lot of people were passing by there all day. And we opened our first glass house there in Amsterdam, in public space, where we had all kinds of economic activities that was run by neighbors, like the clothing swap. People in the neighborhood had a relatively low income, so the sharing of clothes and tools and spaces is very important to these people.
Yeah, and also to highlight again, to plan your activity in the roots where people are. So look very carefully at your location and place them where the action actually is.
Yeah, and this concept of the glass house in public space got picked up by a housing corporation in their garden. They asked us to develop this glass house, and this glass house has a social function, but it's also a greenhouse. And here it's a nursery for plants that we use in the different gardens in the neighborhood. So all kinds of connections are being made between the different projects in the neighborhood, and people are involved in a number of these activities. And one of these activities, for instance, is to try to turn waste of the neighborhood into a neighborhood economic activity. This is a low-tech machine we built ourselves, the bread digester. We had a excess bread problem in the neighborhood. People were throwing the bread in the street, attracted for the birds, but it also attracted a lot of rats. So we started collecting this bread centrally, and in this machine, bacteria digested the bread into gas. In the back, you see the gas bag, and in the room next to it, we placed an oven, and we could bake daily bread there. So the waste bread became a fuel for neighborhood activity. We were not allowed to continue this activity in a residential house. So we made the step to building the bread digester and the kitchen together in one shipping container.
Yeah, what is nice, and it really shows in this picture that, of course, the machine is merely a tool. For us, it's so much more important who uses the tool. And in this case, the ladies of various backgrounds showed us really how to bake bread in so many forms. And it's also highlighting a lost tradition that people, a technique that people forgot about.
Yeah, so this problem solving of the waste in the neighborhood also became an exchange between cultural groups that taught each other about different ways of bread making. So the negative phenomena of the waste bread became the fuel for very positive activities.
But one more thing to say, it's a sequence of actions. Huh? Don't forget about it. You need, of course, your tool, but you need your user. And then, of course, you need your audience to use what the user has made as a product.
Yeah, what we often say is that we don't aim to design products, but to design processes. And this is another example of, we had a big problem with discarded frying oil that people were throwing in down the sink. So the sewage system was getting clogged. So we started collecting this frying oil, and we made a new product out of candles. So we started to collect frying oil so that we solved the problem, and we turned it into a neighborhood economic activity.
Yeah, and also by showing it on the wall and making it very visible how things work. Huh?
Yeah, you see the process.
So really share your knowledge into a commons.
And this candle comes with a refill set, and so people can start to make their own candles from their waste oil in their own homes. Of course, in our cities, food production is a very important thing. A lot of the logistics in the cities are about food, and the food industry, as we know it now, produces a lot of excess food on a daily basis just because of the economic system.
Which is thrown away in the end of the day.
Yeah, and we collect this food at markets in Amsterdam, and we part of it we give it away, part of it we try to conserve. So with again with residents from different cultural backgrounds, we try to experiment with different techniques of conserving our foods, so we can keep our foods much longer and thus save a lot on waste of food. Here you see the glass house that is next to the orchard that we just showed you, where we have lots of preserved goods, and the food industry, their excess of product is also the source of a lot of global warming problems that we have because of our agriculture. And now we zoom out again to the global. We got introduced to the agricultural universities of Mexico and Wageningen to do something about agriculture in the rainforest in Mexico, which is very damaging to the rainforest. So the little rainforest we still have on this planet, we have to save it by changing the agriculture there. And here you see the kitchen table where we preserved our foods in Amsterdam now becomes an encounter, an exchange possibility between all kinds of disciplines. You see technical tools, you see food, so scientists, farmers, designers, architects, artists have to start working together to come to integral solutions.
And need to come to the table, huh? And start communicating.
So here we are meeting in the jungle in Mexico with scientists, with farmers, with creatives, to try to develop a new understanding of the food production. And here you see a famous Mexican chef, Alan Mendez, who was with us in the jungle, exchanging knowledge with local ladies and trying to come up with new solutions for diets and maybe change agriculture behavior as well. Again, the food preserving, as we do in Amsterdam, we did it in the jungle of Mexico as well with these ladies, with their specific knowledge bringing to the table. And at the moment, we are together with the local community trying to develop a central hub where there can be a laboratory, a garden, and a kitchen, and where farmers, scientists, and creators can work together to a future new way of agriculture in the rainforest. And we do this development together with the local community because they are also the ones that are taking over the responsibility for this permanent lab and kitchen, as we call it, to preserve the beautiful and important rainforest of Mexico. With this image, I want to conclude our presentation, and we are very curious and to see what kind of solutions people come up with and how they see democratic experiments as tools to, as we said earlier, to save our ecosystems
and to make change happen.
To make change happen. Thank you very much.
Very beautiful. So many fantastic case studies being presented us all at once. I'd like to now go ahead and turn the next chapter to the Crosstalk session, which we will have for approximately 25 minutes. Tim, are you with us now?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great. So thank you again for Asa and Fiona and Roel for the presentation. I've been actually taking notes off screen when you guys are presenting, and I before I ask the questions, because when I was writing it down, I can already see there's a lot of resonance in terms of what you guys are doing. So I want to take this time just to, if you guys have any thoughts about each other's presentation, I'd like to take this chance so in a way that we can get into a conversation. So maybe we can start with Asa.
Okay, so thank you very much for a beautiful presentation. I really enjoyed good examples of democratic experiments from your project, and especially I'm interested in the word responsibility, which appears in your presentation sometimes, because the responsibility can be a negative pressure for the people, but you're using it as a tool to unite people and make people unite and encourage them to join your project. So I'd like to know much more about your thought on the responsibility.
Well, likewise, in your presentation, we already recognized a lot of the principles that we like to use in our work as well. And I think what is so beautiful about what creatives can contribute to these processes is that, for instance, the Mexico project, the scientists had been there for decades already doing their research. The farmers were facing their own problems, but some way there was no connection between the two groups.
They were literally in the same space, but it's just creating or finding simple solutions to put them together at a table to start a conversation and also start processes.
And so we like to call our project really tools for collaboration, tools for encounter. It's not a product, but it's a tool to be used by the audience.
And therefore, our work is also very much placed in public space or outside the gallery or outside the museum, really at the places where problems appear. Huh? So we are in the tunnel. That's where our audience is. We are in the jungle. That's where the problem is present. So it's very important to look for those locations carefully and try to understand how you can mediate basically the conversation and the encounter.
I see.
And
Yeah, I understand your project is very inclusive. Of course, humans and also non-humans, you are very tolerant to peoples. So I love that point.
And that's of course the very difficult part of it as well, to find the line where you as creative step back and let the democratic talk for itself.
Yeah.
I see. Any thoughts, Fiona and Roel, in terms of Asa's presentation?
Yeah, I loved your presentation. Very, very nice. And it's in time of crisis, where there's a lack of formal systems, where the bottom-up approaches are being visible, and also the informal systems become visible, and also show at that moment the power and the beauty of it, and the do-it-yourself solutions, the low-tech solutions, the innovation, which was always there. With a beautiful story you were telling about the cows. I mean, the cows were always there, but became visible, and the beautiful the solution that you explained with cleaning the waste through the cows becomes visible. And this is this is so important to understand also with this COVID pandemic, where we need to really keep on the beautiful changes that it also created. So now it appears that the importance of connection is so important. When there's a lack of it, it shows how important it is, and also the public space that became so important. This was the only location where we could go. We could take a little walk, but other than that, we could not go out. So it's super important, this public space, and the informal care, because of the lack of everything closed. Nobody could go to the formal care. And so a lot of, also in Amsterdam, in our projects, the entrepreneurs took over this role of informal care. And so we need to keep that power and this beauty and turn it into something visible that was not so visible before the crisis.
Yeah. I think often in times of crisis, we can learn a lot. In our 20 years or so that we are doing Cascoland now, we have seen economic crisis where the governments were retracting, and then creatives and residents stepped in and started to create bottom-up public space. The COVID is another challenge where we see how important public green in our cities is, where people can go if a lot of services are closed. So the crisis can also teach us a lot.
Yeah, we need a new kind of democracy, of course, and we need to be very careful that the democracy is not going back as we knew it before, because this quickly can change also, no?
Exactly.
Into the normal, into the society and the old structures that we already knew.
I totally agree, and also I think this is. I thank you so much for. I think in your presentation, both of your presentation actually has already been very insightful in terms of how you take the democratic experiment into your own practice. In some sense, also I think both the presentation were emphasizing actually the democratic practice or democratic experience is actually not given by the government, but it's actually is people that actually are taking responsibility and also enabling them to take charge of the situation. So I think that's it's really insightful that I think both of the presentation actually have shared that common message to our audience. And on that note, I would like, because the soul is actually sometimes it's quite complex and the dynamics changes in different conditions. So when you're deploying a lot of these different experiments, I like to know, what do you think is the most important elements when you first consider in the different contexts or the different situations?
Well,
Who's first?
Go ahead. Maybe this time, Roel, if you don't know first.
I think that we often think in our conservative way of thinking that professionals have a certain knowledge, the academics, they have a certain knowledge and they own a kind of knowledge. But I think what is important about democratic experiments is to realize that residents in our cities or the farmers in the jungle are also a valuable source of knowledge, and we have to recognize that the formal knowledge is not the only knowledge that is important in a democratic experiment. Especially the informal has to be an important part of it. So I think this links in with both Asa Ito's presentation and ours.
And we have to very carefully look and observe again, because the solutions are mostly already there. So we really need to step back and carefully observe.
Thank you very much. Asa-san?
Yeah, for me, the most important elements must be the time for the democratic experiments. Yeah, we are living so busy life, and we don't have much time to listen people's voice. So we tend to express just my words and don't listen. So we need time to find a new type of democracy.
Interesting. I see. Yeah, I mean, just for myself, I've been writing a lot of notes. I've learned a lot already. Yeah, especially like actually the when Roel was saying generators for change, like taking those opportunities. Yeah, I think that was great. So moving on. Go ahead. Fiona, you want to add
one
something?
more thing. Yeah, really turning into action, because there's lack of time. We need to act. So we need to, like the proverb says, like we need to do.
Understand. So I want to shift the gear just a little bit, and I want to talk about the role of creativity and art in terms of how that plays a role in terms of engaging in the different stakeholders in our society. I think, like, of course, obviously what you guys have been engaging is already almost like creativity is almost innate it's almost second nature to you guys already. But I like to kind of bring that up on the surface to talk a little bit about that. And if there's like memorable moments or like if there's like aha moments in that case when you're executing some of these projects that, oh, I got this, or I think we are improving or we moving forwards. Yeah, if you can share with us those experience, that will be really great. This time maybe Asa-san first.
Okay, that's a very difficult question.
It is.
But I think, when you feel anxiety, making something will encourage you so much, because by making something, that anxiety change into very concrete problems. So when you feel anxiety, that anxiety is very vague, and you can't catch it. But by making something that anxiety, you can catch it and you can find what you have to do after that. So yes, that's the point, that creativity or art can empower us.
Yeah, especially when I was reading some of your works, Asa-san, I think it was really great that how you see what people were perceiving as disabled, but that is actually just another interpretation of there's opportunity for new perceptions.
Yes, that's right.
Thanks.
Well, we very much
Fiona,
share
yeah.
that.
Yes, and Roel and Fiona, yes.
Especially this different perspective that artists and creatives or designers can bring, can also bring a new kind of inspiration to processes, or to connect between different resource pools of different groups and between different communities. And then this perspective that this change of perspective that you can offer can also open up new ideas and new possibilities, so that conflicts that are there, or problems that we see in society, can be approached from a different angle or a different perspective. So,
yeah, and bring back the inspiration, huh? where sometimes it's not being seen anymore. The creative can inspire again groups of people, and then they could be triggered to start new processes.
I have one more add-on questions for Fiona and Roel. I think like in some of your projects too, because your stakeholders is not just human, but also you were actually, the human was an agent for the environment as well. So can you share a little bit more about that in terms of how you're working with the communities, but your stakeholders actually beyond the human realm?
Well, I already touched a bit on it in our presentation. You know, we have to be aware that we are talking about society. In a way, our society is an ecosystem with a lot of stakeholders in it. But our human society is only part of a much larger ecosystem, which because of the Anthropocene that we are in now, we are influencing a lot of the processes globally. Also for non-humans, we are making a lot of impact on their lives. So we have to realize that we have a responsibility there to rethink our behavior, because we have chosen to take on this large responsibility for the planet in maybe even threatening now the total ecosystem. You know, so we have to realize that personal human development cannot be center anymore in our whole design thinking.
Yeah, because it's interesting, I guess, for the audience, actually, when we say democratic experiment, I think intuitively it was all very from a human perspective. But in some sense, when we were talking about this, our sphere of influence is actually way bigger than just talking about human beings, I think. Yeah.
And that's why, for instance, the green in our cities is so important, because that brings back biodiversity. Biodiversity makes ecosystems more stable. We see it in our agriculture in the Netherlands. Basically, the cities are richer in biodiversity, not only human activity, the multiculturality, but also the animal world, and this makes actually the ecosystems in the city maybe more stable than on the countryside these days. So these are interesting reflections. You know?
Thank you very much for the response. So a little bit of follow-up on this, because I think you also covered a lot of these in your presentation already, but also when I was before you were presenting, I was also I saw one of the interviews that you did from the sample papers. Actually, what you were saying actually from there was you adopt kind of a guerrilla approach, and also you mentioned this. Actually, you are you're focusing on the design of process rather than the output itself. So in this case, like how do you think when you are engaging with your stakeholders during this open-ending process, how did you do it? Like how did you engage? With the community that you're in? Can you give us a bit insight of those? Sorry, it's a little bit tricky question. Tricky question.
No, it's of course it's so different in every location. It desires for a different approach. So it's very, very site specific. So first, when we go to a location, we very carefully try to understand where are we, what is the culture, what are the rules and regulations, and who is using the locations. And also finding the quality of the people that use the location. So and what I said earlier, looking very much what is already there, and then starting to engage with trying to make communication with the user and finding out how to move forward, basically. And this is very much site specific and always different. So there is not a blueprint or something to go about, but it's very important that you start by stepping back and observing.
And often processes in neighborhoods are often limited by over-regulation, by authorities, or top-down master plans and stuff. And this is why we so strongly believe in this guerrilla approach, sometimes to try to break or bend the laws, rather, do some kind of activity with from what you think is important for the community, rather than think what is important for the authorities. So we sometimes try to challenge authorities to rethink their authority by showing them guerrilla style alternative scenarios.
And it's mostly when you show where you can prove that things could be different, that authorities get inspired after that. And that is the moment when you, of course, try to engage with those parties as well. It's very important to then try to have a conversation with those parties as well, to try to develop a true change.
Yeah, and in our democratic systems, we don't try to see the authority as the bottom-up party, but we think that the authority should be a representative of the people, you know. So, and this is also a thing that we try to address towards authorities. Like, you are a civil servant, which means you should be serving in your policies towards the demands of your population, your residents, rather than put on top-down restrictions on all kinds of shared public space systems or experiments that we are trying to do.
And there's great power, if you connect, if you can find the collectiveness and a return of commons, then you can really start with a larger group of people, through that, and make change.
And come to a much more inclusive society if you open up these privatized resources again to like a much more common approach.
Yeah, I think from your work, I really see the kind of, it's an art form to where to push that line. To how to engage with, actually, like, there, of course, there's resistance on the other side as well, but also regulations, like that balance of how to push that line is quite beautiful in a way that how you're representing in your work. And also, I have a question for Asa. So in your this year's kind of the last sentence of the statement, the YouFab statement, you mentioned that we're not just focusing on democratizing the technologies, but actually what we need to do is actually, in a way, is to continue to build democracy through this process of creations. And because it's quite a difficult process concept to grasp, because of course you mentioned also there's like the literal interpretation of it, but also there's a figurative interpretation of it. I want to focus a little bit more on the figurative interpretations, where can you share with us your perspective of how the process of creating could be an experiment for exploring democracy in this process? Sorry, I leave the most difficult question at the end.
Yes, again, it's difficult, but I like to try to say something. Creating something with the spirit of democracy, we need to invent new languages, because in most cases, common language is made for majority, and it is not suitable for to express the situation of minority. So first, we should try to find the new languages to express the experiences of people engaged in that creativity. For example, we say nice to see you, but blind people can't see you, so they smell people, or they hear, they listen people. So we have to be conscious the language we use every day. I think that's a start point.
I think that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's also. I think there's a lot of relearning especially during these types of crisis. Our sense of awareness is completely redefined in that sense. So I think the time is quite tight. But last but not least, I think this is for the general audience that are participating in this event. So the last is, what is your expectations like for the entries for this year? If you can give some hints for the potential entries for this year.
Yes.
Maybe we can start with Asa-san. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, I like to discuss about the possibility of democratic experiments with you all. And yes, this theme is very big, huge, and global size. But I'm interested in very local solution of your site. So I like to know who are your stakeholders and what is the best choice for your community.
Thank you very much. And Fiona and Roel?
I think what is interesting, as Fiona just explained, if we enter into a project, we try to have as little expectations as possible, but learn from what we engage in. So also for this challenge, I would say, let's try to expect nothing, and let's be surprised by the unexpected that we can encounter. If that makes sense.
Any last words? Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I think, yeah. So Fiona, any last words? Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's a wonderful last.
Okay. That's great. So thank you so much for spending the time with us to dive into, even though a really short time, I think that we dive into something meaningful and deep and also executable. So in the last few minutes, I would want to pass it back to Kelsey.
Great. Thank you so much. Multiple times in that discussion, I was getting goosebumps hearing what you were all discussing. So I deeply appreciate the depth and passion with which you're talking about this topic. Just really briefly, so I'm also a notorious note taker. And I'm not going to go too deeply into the notes that I've been taking, just to say that yeah, the major points or most important elements which have been discussed by the speakers, and something that I think is sometimes overlooked in YouFab, is about timing and about listening with intention. I also think that Asa's discussion of needing to invent a new language is also incredibly insightful. And I also hope that we can see some of the YouFab applicants this year to it addressing these points directly. Yes. So I will upload this later for people to review, especially those who are interested to apply. There's also going to be a report after this event, which will be published in English and Japanese for those of you who are interested in reviewing some of the major points reviewed today. I would also like to briefly introduce again the event that will be running on September 3rd on Friday. At that time, I will be speaking with Ariane Koch and Akira Ikinouchi on the topic of the thinking and process of making things for the future. I hope that you all join us at that time as well. It will be featured on YouTube Live again. Yes. And with that, I would like to draw today's event to a close. Thank you again so much, Asa Ito and Roel and Fiona, Tim, for your participation in today's event. I think that today was also a very lovely exercise of democratic experiments as well. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking with you guys.
Thank you.
Same here.
Nice. Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing the applicants for YouFab this year.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a lovely evening.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
all.
very
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.